want to talk about a new game that we're developing called New Century Energy. And it's a computer game for classroom use that I think is finally going to take project-based learning, PBL, and fulfill the potential that project-based learning has through game-based learning, or GBL. But before I talk a little bit about that, let me first get my own 2 cents in on how to teach science the wrong way. I want to do this by trying to teach you a lesson about the monotylation of traxylene. And I hope to have it up on the screen for you, but I'm make it a little more difficult and I'll have to read it to you. But if you listen carefully, I think you can answer the 4 questions that I have about the monotylation of traxylene after I've taught you this lesson. It is very important that you learn about traxylene. Traxylene is a new form of zionter. It is monotyled in serostana. The serostanians crystallate large amounts of thevon and then bracter it to quasal traxylene. Traxylene may well be one of our most leucized Sneslaus in the future because of our zionter lescalage. All right, so let's take this quiz. What is traxylene? If you were listening carefully, you'll remember it's a new form of zionter. Where is traxylene monotyled? And again, if you were listening carefully, you'll realize it's monotyled in serostana. So you're 2 for 2. Number 3, how is traxylene quasal? It's a little more complicated, but again, especially if you had this in front of you, as most test questions might give it to you, you bracter large amounts of thevon into quasal traxylene. So your answer, that one correctly as well. And then why is it important? Because it will be one of our most leucized Sneslaus in the future. So you all did perfect. You got 100 on that test, on that quiz. Well, this is obviously made up. And the next one I want to do is one that is actually real, because this is what I do with my students. I have undergraduate research students come in and do work in the field. And so I'm going to read you a similar lesson that is an accurate description of what we do and give you a short quiz on that and see if it's any better. It is very important that you learn about Arcelacean taphonomy. Arcelaceans are a major group of testaceous rhizopods. During preservation in any depositional environment, taphonomy produces different thanatoconoses from extant bioconoses. Thanatoconoses are the result of differential preservation during burial that differ between environments of deposition due to differences in original bioconoses and soil biogeochemistry. Arcelaceans are one of our most useful paleoindicators for lacustrine environments. So once again, what are Arcelaceans? They're testate rhizopods. How do thanatoconoses form? They form from original bioconoses in different depositional environments. Why do thanatoconoses differ? Because these bioconoses are different, along with each of the environments different. And why are they important? Because they're our most useful paleoindicator for lacustrine environments. That was a little bit same pattern, same type of lesson, and just as little learning. I don't ask my students who come in to do research with me to read that paragraph and then go out in the field. I don't expect them to understand any of those terms really all along the way. At the end of the semester, or some of them stay with me a little bit longer, they probably would understand that. But it comes from the experience. And this is what years and years of research and practice, as we've seen, teachers who are good at what they do, realize that understanding has to be constructed from experience based on prior understanding. That's really the only way we can learn as individuals, is to construct our understanding. The pedagogy of this is called constructivism, and in science, this is the way science is done. Teaching science the way science is actually done. Because I also want to argue, hopefully successfully, that science is not the stuff we learn. Science is not the knowledge. It's the process of finding it. In fact, it's a process of solving problems. So problem-based learning or project-based learning is how we should be teaching science. That's the solution. Now, why isn't this happening? Why isn't more of this happening? We do have wonderful teachers who are able to do this. And again, we've known from the research for years that this is the best way to do it. But it's still not happening enough. We still don't have enough students learning by engaging in hands-on, minds-on projects that force them to solve a problem by seeking out information on their own. and constructing their own understanding. And the reasons this is difficult sometimes is because, these are the things that project-based learning allows students to do. So let me go back actually. The reason this is difficult is that it's not as easy as it sounds. It's the exceptional teacher that is able to do this. And in fact, if you do it wrong, sometimes you can actually be counterproductive. And so what our society has tended to do is play it safe and do the kinds of teaching that is traditionally successful, at least for the top 10, 15% or so of those who are going to go into fields. We need something else. We need something else that challenges students to ask and refine questions, design and control multiple investigations, gather, analyze, interpret data, and report their findings. This needs to be, science is a community. It's a group project. No scientist anymore today makes discoveries on their own. Everything is about teams. I've heard the term collaborative team. We're going to see more about that in the game as well. This kind of teaching, this kind of learning has been in the standards for quite a long time. More and more, we're seeing, again, from the research and publication after publication, from national societies and so forth, saying we need to do more of this in science. So again, what is missing? Well, there's one new technology that's been hopeful for a long time. I remember working at the Children's Museum, and it was sort of when the computers were starting to come into exhibits, and everyone thought, wow, this is going to revolutionize things. Computers are going to do the job. And then the kids would come in and they'd leave the computers over here and they'd go play in the exhibit. The computers hardly ever even got looked at or utilized. So the new technology by itself is not enough, but it does give us the hook, perhaps. We've heard a little bit about how smart games that incorporate educational content, can be not only engaging, but actually accomplish a lot more for learning than just a glorified worksheet. Can actually lead to higher level thinking and higher level problem solving. And so this is where we need to go. And we've seen in the last few years quite a bit of games and the incorporation of games into learning. Games also, if they're played by multiple players, not only engage students in strategies and immersion into an engaging activity where they seek out their own knowledge, but again, they work in groups. The fact that games encourage that and encourage the immersion of the player is part of what makes them so successful. But one other thing the research is starting to show is that we need to take it one more step. We need to not only have an immersion experience, but we need to have the students like this, where the student actually becomes part of the game. But we need to have learning objectives built into the game from the beginning. We need to do a little bit more in terms of making the game project-based learning. New Century Energy, as I mentioned, is a computer game in which students are tasked to work as teams to build energy companies into the next 50 years. So this is a real-world engagement type of game in which the students have to predict what types of energy are going to be most successful, build those plants, compete against each other. This is going to be a competition within HISD. Not only within a classroom or within a grade level of the schools that are participating, but at the end of this competition, teams will go to the Space Center Houston. There will be a lot of monetary prizes and other awards. So there are a lot of incentives for the students to be drawn into this game, to play this game. Why energy? Just take an aside real quickly. Energy not only is an important topic in society right now, we're on the forefront perhaps of changing the way we think about energy, the way we produce energy, decentralizing the grid. There are a lot of challenges to us right now going into the next 50 years. This game, in a sense, is formulating some hypotheses. What might be the successful strategies going into the future? But there's something else about energy. It allows us to integrate a lot of STEM disciplines. There's physics, there's chemistry, there's geology, there's biology, there's math. All of these types of content can be integrated through this endeavor of trying to build an energy company. So there's a lot of synergy that's possible in this kind of game. And in fact, it's that synergy that will take game-based learning to the next level. One of the things we get a little bit afraid of sometimes is with project-based learning is that you can't teach enough content. It takes too long. It's too much time spent on the other things other than direct learning. But by building a synergistic experience, we can overcome that and in fact learn more. And you've heard various teachers with success where the performance on tests have been higher doing it this way than doing it traditionally. And so this, in another sense, hopefully will help some teachers overcome their sort of largesse in going into game-based or using projects in project-based learning. You can see, I'll tell you a little bit about some of the components in the game as we go along here. The teams are chosen by or put together by the teacher to be collaborative learning groups, not ability groups. The teamwork is important because the game quickly becomes so complex that a single player, even a pair of two players, are not going to be successful and they're not going to be competitive. The boardroom is one aspect of the game. Players can constantly go back to the boardroom to seek information, to go back to the lessons that are in the game, to look at how they're doing, to consult with other experts and so forth. The competition is what drives them into the game. The students will play because the game itself will be rewarding. They're competing within classrooms, but also across, as I mentioned. They'll be able to keep track of their scores, go back to the boardroom and see how they're doing. The score is a combination of things, primarily the knowledge that they gain in the game, which unlocks the opportunities to build plants. If they want to build a solar-powered plant, for instance, they have to talk to the foreman about what they need to do. They need to answer questions that come from the foreman or from other experts in the game in order to be able to build the plant. Now, there's a couple tricks in this. The game's not only relying upon the money that they make and the answers that they get to these questions, but also many other complicating factors. The strategy that they take, that start in Houston, dominate the Houston market, go to Dallas, dominate the Dallas market, then they can move on to other cities. Every city presents unique challenges. Every city provides a new level to the game. The game starts on 3 levels, basic, proficient, and expert, based on the National Assessment of Educational Progress standards and definition of those levels. But there's an artificial intelligence in the game that sort of monitors how well the teams are doing, and if they're doing really well, it'll step up the difficulty. This cell phone represents what can happen in the process of playing the game. They start building a plant, the foreman gives them a call. The foreman says, in order to build this plant, we have to understand a little bit about Ohms Law in order to make it the most efficient possible and to get the energy from the plant to the people who need it, to build the transmission lines. So do some research and tell me how many, what I should do, what type of plant I should build. That gets them started. They have to go to a lesson, they look at the research, they answer the question. If they get the question right, their plan is more efficient. If they get the question wrong, it's less efficient. So the students might go into this game with a strategy of let's go as fast as we can, but they'll quickly learn that it's best if they slow down a little bit. It's best if they seek out more information. There will be a meta site that's available outside of gameplay where they can get to all these lessons, they can get to other sources of information, they can learn more so that the next time they show up in their classroom to play the game, they'll be prepared and they will be able to go a little bit faster. The other thing that happens as they're constructing their plants is real life. Again, this is a real world scenario. So if they've built a plant in Houston, a hurricane might come while they're in San Francisco building another plant. If they come back to Houston to deal with the repairs or the upgrades needed due to the damage the hurricane caused, an earthquake may strike in San Francisco. Geopolitical events will happen, changes in market pressures. This is a 50-year scenario, so time is constantly moving. And as they're playing and moving from city to city, it's going to get more and more and more complex. So even though it's the competition that will drive the students into the game, it's the complexity of the game that will force the students to build a complete understanding of the concepts that are required, a complete understanding of how all of this is integrated into a big picture, as well as the individual topics that are needed to build the types of plants that they might build, from solar to nuclear to coal to natural gas, and all of the challenges in transmission and so on. So this game is both project-based learning and problem-based learning. The project is the big picture of the game. The problems or the individual challenges that come up. The complexity of the game is every individual challenge is overcome and only to lead to another one. And the need to have a strategy that carries the team's company into the future is a new level of learning objectives that will drive project-based learning through game-based learning. And that's why I think New Century Energy presents us with an opportunity, perhaps a model, to transform the way we use games in classrooms. Again, there's some wonderful games out there. This is how kids learn now. Kids are coming into classrooms having learned through games, the smart games that they play in history and other things, even for fun, outside of the classroom. There are stealth games that teach. And so kids are used to learning this way. It's engaging, but it can be more than engaging. It can be game-based learning, fulfilling the promise of project-based learning.